Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
It's very exciting news. It's a major employer choosing Chatham-Kent, which is, I'm on cloud nine right now.
It's a culmination of a couple of months working behind the scenes to try and get new service to Windsor. Not only new service to a destination we haven't flown, but also a new airline in Flair. Great partner for us.
We feel the workplace is becoming back to normal as much as possible as we're opening up to the public and having more public functions and special events in the community. It just felt it's the right time to start moving forward again.
Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with another big boost to the region's auto sector. Auto parts maker Magna announced today it'll be opening an electric vehicle components factory in Chatham-Kent. It'll produce the enclosures for batteries that will power a Ford electric pickup truck, and it'll also create 150 new jobs. Dale Molnar now with our top story.
Ultimately, it's a battery tray assembly. So this assembly is a large all aluminum body. It's almost like a tub, if you will. It'll hold all the battery cells that will go inside the F-150 Lightning.
The enclosures are already produced at the Formet Industries plant in St. Thomas. It's a division of the Magna Corporation. The general manager says they needed to expand because of an increase in demand from Ford. So he says Chatham was an obvious choice.
We started looking for, I'll call it a 2 to 3 hour radius, and looking for the right size building as well as a place that can handle the resources that are required to start a new facility. Chatham met both those criteria. It was close to the 401 corridor, and it was on its way to Dearborn, so it kind of checked all the boxes for us, so it met all the criteria.
The company is refurbishing an empty plant on Irwin Street in Chatham. The mayor is thrilled with the jobs it will create.
It's higher end, that they have a lot of high-end technology. The base wage starts at $22.90, so they're looking at production workers right through a lot of maintenance people that they're going to need a lot of high-tech people as well. The whole area, southwestern Ontario, will benefit from this, along with when plants go in Windsor, the same thing. We benefit from that as well.
CANF estimates there could also be 450 spin-off jobs created in the supply chain. MPP Percy Hatfield says this is also great news for our area.
Well, I think it puts us on the map, or keeps us on the map as the automotive capital of Canada, in the sense that the entire region, it doesn't matter if you're in Chatham-Kent or Windsor, Essex, these are jobs that you can commute to very easily.
The company is putting $100 million into the facility over the next 2 years. Production is expected to begin in the fall. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
In just 2 days, cross-border travel restrictions will ease up here in Canada. It'll be easier for people to travel, and many will be looking for a deal. For Windsor Airport, they're focused on bouncing back from pandemic shutdowns that hit airlines and airports hard. The CBC's Jason Vio has more.
For the first time, a low-cost airline is flying into Windsor. Flair Airlines will fly from the Windsor International Airport to Tucson, Arizona from December 1st through March 23rd. Right now, one-way tickets start at just $99, a relatively affordable trend YQG says it wants to continue.
There's a pent-up demand, and I think people really want to travel, whether it's to see loved ones or to do business or to go on vacation.
Right now, there are 4 carriers flying from Windsor to Toronto, the Caribbean, and Calgary. Coming into Windsor on one of those flights today, people had different thoughts about affordability and destination options.
I think any growth for Windsor is important. So more flights to Windsor means more people.
We're from Winnipeg, so there's a lot of those type of flights going out of Winnipeg. So we have history with watching that happen, you know.
The industry is starting to ramp back up again as travel restrictions in Canada begin to ease. Starting April 1st, fully vaccinated travelers will no longer be required to show a proof of a negative COVID-19 test before arriving in Canada by plane or car. While Windsor Airport has landed a low-cost flight to Arizona, so far there are no Canadian destinations like other regional airports. Hamilton Airport, for example, recently added cheap flights to Calgary and Halifax. Waterloo has a low-cost fare to Vancouver. Windsor's airport says it works a lot behind the scenes to try to land new airlines and destinations.
Sometimes they put out feelers or they want a package about the region, and we do that as well. So it can be a mix, actually, but I think we've tried to engage a lot of airlines that we haven't before, and we've also engaged our existing partners.
Will there be more low-cost airlines coming to Windsor?
All I can say is stay tuned.
And what about more Canadian destinations?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Stay tuned. We're pretty excited about the future, let's put it that way.
Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
Essex, LaSalle, and Kingsville have all suspended their COVID-19 vaccine policies for staff. Employees will no longer be required to show proof of shots or face regular testing. Kingsville's mayor says it's a move that mirrors the province's decision to end vaccine passports.
It's something that I think we're all looking to adjust and learn to live with as we go forward. Certainly, we'll be responsive to any major shift or change in the health health field and sector. We want to still maintain those that are most vulnerable within our community.
The mayor says 96% of staff are inoculated, and 2 people were laid off as a result of the policy. Santos says they will be welcomed back if they'd like to return. While Kingsville Council voted to suspend the policy this week, LaSalle and Essex suspended theirs earlier this month. Though LaSalle is keeping its policy in place for staff at its fire department only because they work closely with the health sector. Meanwhile, the health unit says the burden of disease is still significant in Windsor, Essex, and hospitalizations due to COVID-19 are on the rise in our region. This just 10 days after the Ford government eased many pandemic restrictions, including mask mandates. There are currently 41 people in hospital. 5 of them are in intensive care. That's up from last week. Just 1 week ago, 26 cases were in hospital, including 3 in the ICU. And a similar trend is being noted at hospitals across Ontario. The director of Ontario's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table says we are in the middle of a 6th wave. And it's because people are letting their guard down too early. Chris Glover has the warning and the reception.
Toronto streets are bustling again, and the resounding feeling is one of pushing past COVID.
I feel over it.
Oh, I'm definitely tired of it.
I'm ready for it to be over. Like, really.
Even if I get it, I can deal with it.
But today, a wake-up call from the director of Ontario's COVID-19 Science Advisory Table. He says we're in the middle of a 6th wave.
The reason for the wave is that we throw caution to the wind. There's much less mask use than what we would have hoped for, and probably quite a bit more contacts than what we would have hoped for. Therefore, we're seeing quite a steep increase right now.
In general, COVID testing in Ontario is nearly non-existent, but wastewater surveillance data is showing roughly 35,000 infections a day, even as the number of COVID patients in intensive care is remaining relatively stable.
The point is, there are vulnerable people out there who will still end up in our hospital, and we don't want them to be exposed to a tidal wave again.
Some are heeding that message.
I just feel, I got to do my part, and if that means wearing a mask, I just don't feel right, like going in and like feeling like, I'm invincible, but like what if the next person beside me isn't?
While many are only wearing masks if they have to. I notice you have the mask around your neck here. How often are you wearing it?
That's because of the office policy. I don't really care about masks anymore.
Today, the Ministry of Health says any increase in cases is expected, and Ontario has vaccines and medications to manage the virus. In a statement, the ministry says the latest modeling shows that our hospitals and healthcare system can manage any of the projected scenarios. But Dr. Uni worries his table's calculations are out of date.
The projections we made will not apply. Why? Because people are actually just behaving differently, and we will need to recalibrate our models.
He worries about complacency combined with waning immunity of vaccines and infections over time, and is pleading with the public to choose the mask, even if they don't have to by law, at least for a couple more weeks. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
The faint glimmers of hope that were sparked by talks between Ukraine and Russia appear to have faded. After negotiations in Turkey yesterday, Russian officials said the country's forces would pull back operations around the capital, Kyiv. But today, the chief spokesman for President Vladimir Putin said there are no signs of any breakthrough yet, and there is still a lot of work ahead. suburbs to the east of Kyiv have been hit with more bombardments. Officials in the region say there has been no let-up. West of the capital, the suburb of Irpin has been retaken by Ukrainian forces, but the area has been devastated by Russian assaults. And Russian forces hit a fuel depot about 200 kilometers west of Kyiv overnight. The fire is now believed to be out. The strike is seen as part of a new Russian strategy to target essential supplies. More than 4 million refugees have now fled Ukraine, and all of the country's western neighbors are feeling the impact. CBC's Briar Stewart has this report from a refugee center in Hungary's capital.
The group behind me just arrived from Ukraine. Now, they were taken by train from the border to the city of Budapest, and they were brought here by bus to a sports center. And the very first thing they have to do when they arrive is be registered. So that's what these people are doing now. And after that, there are a few things they can do at the sports center. We're going to take a walk down here and see the stations that they have set up. Now, everyone who comes here can get a SIM card right away. They can get a meal. They can get help. They have translators on staff here. But really, Hungary for most of these people is just a stop on a very long and exhaustive journey. Over there in the corner, you can see people lined up. What they're lining up for are bus tickets and train tickets on to their next destination. We spoke with some people here who've been traveling for 5 days. One family who went out through Moldova, went through Romania. Now they're in Hungary, they're going to Austria, and their final destination is actually Germany. Now, the vast majority of refugees here are not staying, but Hungary says it's seen 400,000 transit through here already. Hungary is a country in the European Union that has a track record of anti-immigration policies. There's a very long fortified border fence with the border with Serbia. In recent years, it's dismantled the asylum system. And a lot of people have remarked at the difference between how refugees from Afghanistan and Syria have been treated versus the refugees from Ukraine. But of course, it is important to note that the vast majority of people who have come through here will not be staying. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Budapest.
The brutality of Russia's invasion in Ukraine is clear once you step into one of its still working hospitals. In Kyiv, the country's largest children's hospital has been treating some of the war's youngest victims. The images from inside are difficult to look at, and we will spare you from the worst of them. But a warning, you are about to see pictures of young children with severe injuries, and not all of them survived. CBC News Network host Heather Hiscox takes us through some of their stories.
The sounds of shelling over Okhmadid Hospital. Inside, exhausted medical staff do all they can to save as many lives as possible. This patient, a 4-year-old boy from Kyiv, a Russian shell hit his backyard. Below that thermal blanket is a gaping wound on his back. Surgeons remove shrapnel and damaged tissue. Recovery will take a long time.
Она взорвалась слева. Осколки от стекол на машине посыпались в меня и в маму.
Vadia is just 7 years old. A mine exploded just meters from the car she was in at a Russian checkpoint in Irpin. She spent 3 days in a local hospital before being transferred. The journey was a treacherous one. Soldiers had to carry her across a destroyed bridge. At Okhmadid, doctors operated for hours to get the shrapnel lodged in her body. She's had multiple surgeries on her legs as well. Her mother says Vadia wants most to be home and for the war to end. Of course, the wounds you can't see might be the ones that will last the longest. 6-year-old Milana watched her mother die when a Russian missile hit their house near Hostomel. She bears the pain of injury and multiple surgeries on her legs, but the far greater pain is her irreplaceable loss. Her way of remembering? Hearts for her mom. She draws them every day.
Mama, here is, she paint Mama.
Then there are the stories we will never hear. Someone placed the body of this little boy outside the hospital after he died. We don't know what happened to him. But in his image, we see what has happened to the youngest victims of this war.
That was from CBC News Network host Heather Hiscox. Tony Doucette's last day as host of Windsor Morning is tomorrow. We are so sad to see him go as he embarks on his next chapter of retirement. I sat down with him yesterday and we shared part one of that chat with you last night. So here's more from that conversation. You've talked to so many people over the years. You've covered so many stories over the years. Is there a story or an interview or a moment that really stands out for you when you think back on your career?
I think you know me well enough to know that I'm kind of emotional. And it's the emotional interviews that I remember most. And there are a couple. Shelley Atkinson, wife of Senior Constable John Atkinson, came into the studio not long after her husband had been shot and killed. And that one was really difficult. I remember that one very, very well. Another one that I remember very well is someone that's well known in the community, Mike Akpata, the LaSalle town councillor. Mm-hmm. Mike was a Windsor police officer at the time. He was a member of the Essex and Kent Scottish Regiment, the Reserve Infantry Regiment here in Windsor. He volunteered to go to Afghanistan. At the time, Mike and his wife were both police officers. They had 2 small children. And he decides that after doing all of these years of training with the Essex and Kent, that I want to see if my training works. So off to Afghanistan he goes. And when he came back, he came into the studio and he sat exactly where you're sitting right now and told me of the experience over there. And I may get the numbers wrong, but it won't be by a lot. While he was there, it was a 6-month tour of duty. He saw somewhere between 12 and 15 ramp ceremonies where they carry the coffin of the dead soldier onto the transport plane and bring it home. And just thinking about it stops me. And he talked about the sound he would never forget, the lone piper, and the sound of the boots of the pallbearers on the steel ramp as they carried the coffin up. I'll never forget that, and I still haven't gotten over it. You know, I'm the son of a soldier, and a son-in-law of a soldier, and the father of an Air Force officer. So, yeah, meant a great deal. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Thank you for sharing that, Tony. Yeah, that's powerful. And there are young journalists who want opportunities to share these kinds of stories with others as well.
Yeah.
And what's your advice to them in handling stories like this or stories in general as we move forward?
I think over and above everything else, I mean, there's a journalistic rigor that we all bring to the business. But over and above that, I think it's respect. You know, respect the people that you're dealing with and talking to. Try to understand their point of view, where they're coming from. Try to understand their experience, and let them tell you their story. Try to put them in a position where they're willing to share their story with you, you know, that you care.
And for those who have been listening to you, been watching you over the years, who have gotten so used to your voice and find comfort in it and have appreciated the work that you've done, what do you want to say to those listeners and those audience members?
The people who come into this studio and join me on the telephone every day, all of those people have been great. But every day I think about those people out there who invest in this every day, and they do for years. You become a part of people's routine, and I get that. Because before I got into morning radio, it was a part of my routine, you know. Now I'm going to go off and do that, you know, listen to morning radio again. You know, whoever takes this gig, I wish them luck. I'll be there. I'll be listening.
And you can catch Tony's final show tomorrow morning. You can listen starting at 6:10 a.m. on 97.5 FM, wrapping up around 8:30. Tony, we're really going to miss you. Let's take a live look outside there. Much warmer today than yesterday. We had a high of about 15 with the chance of showers continuing tonight and tomorrow. And Colette will be here after the break. She'll give us a close look at the forecast. Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at our weather forecast. Colette, I'm trying to focus on the positive. So it's gray out, but it's warmer.
That's right, it is warmer. And that temperature, yeah, double digits. We're talking about nearly kind of steady there, or even rising through the overnight hours that we're going to be seeing. And some of those wintry conditions, those are a little further east. So there are still freezing rain warnings that are in place in part of the province. We're talking about with the temperatures we're seeing, of course, any moisture coming in the form of some rain showers. But let's not forget that the winds will really be ramping up, especially as we get into Thursday. So back in a special weather statement, this time for a different reason, and it's those windy conditions. So look out for that on your Thursday. It will be mild, and there will probably be some points where you'll be able to enjoy the fact that it's mild because some of the rain will have moved away, or the showers, but you'll just have to kind of hold on to everything. So don't be throwing all your patio furniture and putting it out and all your cushions and everything, or you may lose some of them. But look at these current readings. You can see why we're talking freezing rain in eastern Ontario, closer to the freezing mark or even below in the case of Ottawa, and then that temperature beginning to spike as we see that change in the wind direction. Chatham-Kent at 5, yes, you've got the influence of the lake, but still coming up there as well. So I just want to show you that earlier we did see some lightning strikes coming through, so a few embedded thunderstorms, a chance of that into tomorrow as well. Dry slot right now that we're into, and this was right around 4 o'clock, by the way. Maybe a few of you heard a bit of that rumble of thunder, perhaps not all the way into Windsor, but the wet weather still to come. So the rain overnight tonight, early tomorrow morning. The road's still a little bit wet. You can see this is 7 a.m. and then also getting some sun in between. So that's your sort of window to try and enjoy those milder temperatures before the clouds come right back in. And as the winds change direction, colder air comes in, and even getting into a chance of some flurries. And of course, it's just in time for April 1st, April Fool's Day, but I'm not fooling you. That's what's going to happen. So kind of an up and down again before we'll start to see things stabilizing a little bit. There's a look at some of those forecast wind gusts tomorrow morning. Some of the gusts approaching 80 kilometers an hour coming in off the lake. You'll see those lake waters really churning. But look at these temperatures, at least 10. I mean, we're already there. So steady or rising as we go through those overnight hours. 13, just depends on the timing of this, Katerina. We may capture more than that before that cold front swings through and drops things down a little bit, but not too bad, right? We'll level back off and see things kind of doing that, stabilizing as we get into April.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, we will tell you about a privacy breach in Chatham-Kent. Stay with us. Welcome back. 2 workers at the Chatham-Kent Health Alliance have been fired for, quote, random snooping due to curiosity. A recent audit found they'd poked around at a number of health records with no good reason to do so. The records of about 120 patients were inappropriately breached. The hospital president expressed her regret that the breaches happened. The Alliance has also notified the Privacy Commissioner of Ontario of the incidents. And this week, the province nailed down a child care deal with Ottawa. It'll mean lower daycare costs for parents and increased wages for daycare workers. A local child care supervisor says that salary bump will be a relief for early childhood educators.
Of our ECEs go to work and have their children, and when they have children, they decide not to go back because it just isn't feasible. It just doesn't make sense to go to work and make minimum wage or a little more.
She says ECEs will be needed as parents take advantage of lower fees. And actor Bruce Willis is retiring. Best known for the Die Hard movies, Willis is now facing serious health problems. He's been diagnosed with aphasia, a brain disorder. A statement from the family says he is experiencing cognitive issues and sums up the situation as a challenging time. Willis is 67 years old. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for watching and have a good night.